I even had a list of 400 names, which was much more than necessary.
Wow.
On just trying to shortlist and see what brand names fit perfectly. And I think when I got too overwhelmed, then I turned to Usama and I was like, please give us something.
Tell us a little bit.
Assalamualaikum everyone, this is Umair Javed and with me is Hamza Sheikh. We are your hosts for the first ever episode of Rundown today. Rundown is basically a real life podcast where we present case studies of all the domains of design, tech and marketing. With us we have some amazing guests today and I'd like to introduce first of all we have Hamza with us, Hamza Sheikh. He is the founder of Noms, which you can see at the back, and he's also an avid snacker, and we'll come to that in a bit. And with us is none other than Usama Tauqeer, who also happens to be my partner at AClan. And he's had a very interesting life from working at different incubation centers, government organizations to Fortune 500 companies. And this is where we are today. With all of you. So we're excited to take things forward and let's begin. Shanze?
So, going off of that wonderful introduction that Umair has just given us about you, Hamza, tell me a little bit about the decision you made to enter into the snack industry. Tell me about the thought processes, tell me about the market analysis, the market research you did, and what was, the logic behind or the rationale behind it.
Right. So, at the time when we thought about this, me and my brothers were also, my partners were studying in Canada. We were graduating soon and we wanted to come back to Pakistan and start our careers. We had a family business back in Pakistan, but we wanted to diversify into other industries. So we always had a keen eye for the FMCG or consumer goods space. We just wanted to do a little bit more research on where we should enter. So at the time, I was already an avid snacker in Canada, but I always went for the healthy options because at the time I was trying to lose weight, just have healthier habits. So when I graduated, I came back. I started going to the grocery stores to find something for me, and I didn't find any, to my surprise. There was no healthy snack in the market for anyone who wanted it. Looking at the gap in the market and that over time in the snack space, we hadn't seen much change over the last 10-15 years when it came to specifically the chips category. We had seen other categories introduce many brands, many companies came into biscuits, into candies, into chocolates, into sauces, but nothing really changed when it came to the savory snack space, namely the chip space. So we thought this is something to look at, so we did our research. And eventually we founded Noms, as you see today.
Tell me what challenges you faced in terms of procurement issues for machinery, because again, you've told us this is a unique product line you've come out with, right?
We had no experience in this space. We had no experience in consumer goods. We had no idea what to do in food manufacturing. So the first thing we did...
Quite a challenge, I feel.
Quite a challenge. So we had to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
So it was a process of a couple of years.
Yep.
My brothers and me, we traveled the world talking to different suppliers, attended different courses around the world, trying to understand the technical side of things and the marketing side of things. Even trying to create this product, looking at raw materials, our suppliers had no idea what we were trying to create. So it was consistent back and forth. It took us a couple of years at least to create the product that you see.
So do you feel as though your experience or just that concept of having that family business aided you in your this venture into 100%, the uncharted territory?
100%. So we had no prior business experience. I had just graduated, came back from Canada to Pakistan, and I had no idea how work happens here. So having a family business already there to kind of guide us how to create a new business, how to manage people, how to train them, how to execute an idea and bring it to fruition really helped us along the way.
When all of this came to fruition, for instance, what was the reaction of the core team? What did it feel like?
I mean, for waiting 2 years for a product to arrive.
It was actually a long time. So we created this company in 2019 and we launched in 2023.
Before the COVID
there was
era.
a lot of pressure on us to bring that product out. because we had built a factory, we hired so many people, we were paying their salaries, but we hadn't made anything yet. So it was a big pressure to bring the product out. However, when we finished the product, we were very excited. We were grateful because we created something that we actually loved, and we knew in our hearts that this was going to succeed, inshallah. We're still in that early phase, but we see a very good response.
But you seem to have made a name for yourself, which is
I hope so.
So now that you have your product, right? So you have a staff, you have a factory, you have things coming out which are edible. And when did you decide was the right time to reach out for the marketing efforts of?
So when we had an idea that we're very close to creating the final product, we knew the branding side or creating the packaging, creating the brand was going to take maybe equal amount of time.
Yeah.
So then we realized that we need someone to actually make what we had in our minds, because we were creating something that was new, we were creating something that was premium, we were creating something that was completely different out there. But we had so many ideas in our mind, but we had no idea how to put it in front of us or how to create it. So we needed outside help. There's very few players entering into this space. So the agency that we wanted to have, we wanted someone who would actually understand the limitations of a new company coming into the space, given the management had no prior experience. Like, we did not have the big budgets to execute because, again, we were learning. We did not know what the right steps were. So we wanted an agency who understood our vision, who understood our limitations, and who believed in the product that we're creating, and kind of had a hand-holding approach to take us through, because, like I said, we had no experience. So we wanted that kind of education to be passed on to us as well. So me and Usama had our first, what did we have?
So first call.
First call.
I
was in Canada at the time.
Oh, interesting.
And I think Usama, I was in Canada at the time. My time, it was 1 a.m. And me and Usama had that meeting for 2 hours.
Wow.
And I think we really hit it off at the start, because it was just a very organic conversation. I was very transparent. I was very honest, which we hadn't experienced before in agencies. And we just thought it would mesh very well, our relationship.
That's great.
Forward.
And Usama?
We are an agency which has entered its 10th year now. We have a 10 years long legacy, but interestingly enough, we have never marketed ourselves. So whenever we receive a call from a potential client, we already know always that it's coming in from a referral of the sorts. But it was, for the first time, it was a very nice, tense call of the sorts. Firstly, though, Hamza introduced himself, and then he said, I am trying to start a new FMCG company. It's an extruded snack brand. And from that day till this day, the moment he had me was when he used this very specific term, extruded snack brand. And I could tell this person is not a businessman.
This is quite specialized.
He's an entrepreneur trying to do his stuff. And our process is always, as Hamza said, is very transparent, very honest. We more or less go with the pro bono consultancy approach for the first couple of meetings. We also have this criteria, an unset criteria, whenever we are surfacing someone for the very first time. We make our mind, are we even the best fit for them or not? I thoroughly remember I said to Hamza, we went on the call. And I said, I would like to come in and visit you guys. And he said, I'm currently in Canada. You can go visit my brother, but he is very busy, so you have to keep it very specific. And considering I tend to talk a lot as well.
Oh, quite a lot.
Quite a lot. I decided on the dot, 30 minutes, I'll leave, 30 minutes, and I'll be gone. But that meeting, which was supposed to be 30 minutes, ended up becoming a 5 to 6 hours long meeting. And the main caveat in that was someone had told us, and again, this is the best part about working with Team Noms, and then the parent company at that stage, which is the organization Nutribel, was the fact that there are different stakeholders bringing in different perspectives. And when I talked to Hamza, there was a different ball game. When I talked to Asad, a couple of friend companies, agencies had guided them that, you want to launch an FMCG brand in Pakistan. simply dish out around 3 to 4 million in terms of a DVC, and your job is done.
Oldest trick in the book.
Oh,
and make a jingle.
And make a jingle, and then also like forget about the brand, forget about the touch points and everything. To start off with, people do not even care about the brand touch points in terms of their design, the brand equity, the visual identity, the semantics of it. Anyway, so when I say 30 minutes meeting converted into 4 to 5 hours or 6 hours, a major chunk of that was that I was convincing him that, hey, you can do your DVC when it, like, if nothing works out, but instead of dishing out 4 to 5 million on the marketing and advertisement side of things, you have a very nuanced product. Let's make new brand.
Yeah.
And this is where, like Hamza said, I as an individual and we as an organization under AClan, we are always on a lookout for these like crazy entrepreneurs who are trying to do something new. And what I had in mind was, and it's one of my favorite case studies as well, how Red Bull disrupted the canned market. My idea was that instead of competing with the giants over here or competing with the micro snack market, we would rather have a category of our own. This is where my main focus individually with Hamza and Asad, Faisal and all of the other stakeholders was always from day one brand. I was not asking them their short-term questions. I was trying to understand their long-term vision with regards to the brand. Instead of looking at the visible iceberg, we also we look at the entirety of the iceberg, which also entails the vision, mission, values. What kind of what personal values do they have? They bring on the table. What
things
do they?
which people probably don't consider as part of the brand.
As part of the brand.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in Pakistan, whenever people talk about brand, they're only talking about the visual brand identity, and that too only the logo. Absolutely. Everything else, which is the extended brand universe, media elements, they do not take into account. That's why it's most of the time it's incoherent. There are many amazing folks doing amazing work over here, but they are a very small faction, almost like 1 to 2% of individuals or agencies are at it. But when we talk about the brand, we are not only talking about the visuals of it, but also the semantics of it, also the touch points. In this case, they wanted to launch a packaged product. So our brand went beyond the screens. It was beyond a DVC. It was a product which you would hold, you would see. It could also fall under the impulse buying category as well. So we not only had to look at it from a 360-degree point of view, we also wanted to understand what is the tech literacy of this organization. Like how futuristic are they? How experimental are they? I used some terms like back in the day, NFTs were very on, and I was like, would you be interested in launching an NFT-based marketing campaign? And these are the small, you can say, knowledge nuggets for us in order to understand the mindset of a client. And every single time we brought something experimental, futuristic, we always heard a loud yes. And this is also where the brand ethos start converging into the brand in itself. I asked Hamza as well as Asad, and I was like, if we are at the stage that we are talking a DVC, do you have a logo? Do you have a brand name? And they said, like, we might, but do you want to help us with that? And in our arena, we call it the branding drill. So it starts with this, understanding the long-term, short-term goals, naming the brand, the semantics and whatnot, what kind of tonality we are going ahead with, and then also sketching some stuff, vectorizing it, and then goes on and on.
We realized that the branding part of what we're trying to create is as crucial as the product we made ourselves.
Yeah.
And the reason about that came along was because we were creating something that's completely new. It's a healthy snack in a space where there are no healthy snacks. It's more expensive than any other snack in the market. The packaging is completely different. The product shape is completely different. The ingredients are different. The flavors are different. Everything is different. So given it's so unique, the brand part of it has also to deliver in the same element.
Had to reflect the same.
Had to reflect the same values.
Of course.
So we realized that it would go beyond just a DVC. We would have to really boil down and try to set the branding element first, and then we can move on to better parts.
So if you go to any superstore, supermart, the snacks rack is just full of all sorts of different snacks. And of course, it's quite hard to tell which ones of which category. So I'm sure maybe in this industry there wasn't much of competition. But if you look at those racks, which aren't technically the same thing, but there's a lot of competition.
We were very lucky in this one regard where because the space hadn't changed when it comes to more brands coming in or just new product offerings, when we started placing our product in stores, people already started talking about it. People already gravitated towards something new that came in.
Yeah.
So we realized that, you know, just by putting a very unique product in
On
those
the shelf.
spaces, it sort of became advertising,
Yeah.
right? And with the colors that we made, with the packaging that we made.
When we talk about consolidated markets, especially if they are related to an instinct which is almost impulsive in nature, especially with snacks across the globe, not only in Pakistan, across the globe. It's only a split second decision. You look at a new brand in the market, even if you haven't seen their communication or advertisement anywhere, if the brand in terms of packaging appeals to you in terms of its name and everything, if it's reflective of its ethos in a manner that it's really not only converging with the target audience and market, but also their mind state. So for instance, someone could be our potential target audience, but they might not be in their mind state just yet, right? This is where the product brand margin is minimized, and this as an agency was our goal. But the best part was whatever we were recommending, Hamza being Hamza, and then his brothers, and then other stakeholders in the company, not only they were aligning with us, but they were also questioning everything, which I really like whenever I am working with someone. If someone just says, okay, I would just take whatever you are proposing as you are the field expert, without really questioning, not only empirical evidence of it, but also our authority on the subject matter, this becomes a very, how should I put it, a single-sided, lopsided process, which is never helpful, especially in the creative market. Because if we talk about technicality versus subjectivity, if we are, let's say, accountants, or if we are in a technical firm, we say 2 + 2 is 4. There's no denying its effect.
Yeah.
But when you talk about colors, when you talk about subjective subject matters or creativity, even a singular room could have so many different directions. So we all started with the personification of the brand first, and then we came to the name.
I understand. So I mean, I'm just cutting you off a bit, because of course so Rundown exists because we also want to break down the process for you, the process that is being followed by AClan. So if you were to break down, so you had a meeting, the scope of work was defined. Now you're moving on to, first you do a market analysis, which in this case tallied with the findings of Hamza and his team. Then we walk towards brand personification. What's next in line, basically? How does that flow look like?
For us, most of our processes are modular in nature, and we have made it deliberately so. We tell the client, okay, this is the general process which the brand has to follow. This is the life cycle, pre-launch, during launch, and post-launch. You tell us how much surfacing you require from us. You could give us the name and we could come up with the logo, or you could give us the logo and the name and we could come up with the extended brand universe, or you can have the brand in its entirety conceived, and then you can come to us for marketing, for your development, web development and whatnot. In this case, and the best part about Hamza is he also loves, I guess, listening and talking as much as I do. We had so much alignment during our calls, like the calls went on and on, that Hamza said, "Ki you bring in your entire spectrum on the table with regards to branding and show me, like, pitch it to me as to what are you proposing, and if I'm aligned, I'll adopt it." And this is where the first document was created, I guess. Instead of going into the very minute details of it, we came up with a couple of names. Hamza and team said, bring in more names, and then on the third tranche and on the third layer, we adopted the name formally. I would give my perspective, and you can also hear, because I haven't heard his honest feedback as to
on this.
how did he conceive it.
I think it's a little too late to get his honest feedback.
No, but again, what we tried to do was, so we aimed to, again, educate ourselves as much as we could. So I read up on how to create a brand name. I started studying scientific articles or how agencies do create brand names.
Yeah, there's a method to
So
this madness.
there's a linguistics study that I looked at about what your brand name should sound like. So you just trying to do as much research as we could. I even had a list of 400 names, which was much more than necessary.
Wow.
On just trying to shortlist and see what brand names fit perfectly. And I think when I got too overwhelmed, then I turned to Usama and I was like, please give us something.
Tell us a little bit about how it was 400 brand names.
So it was a long, tedious process.
Wow.
We had some good names, some really bad names, but I think it was important in the process of trying to understand why
Trial and
brands
error.
are named a certain way, why certain letters come into place, why certain syllables are required, number of certain syllables. So that process really helped us in, I think, working better with Usama in doing this drill as well, and eventually trying to decide on a name.
Now that we know that Hamza has 400 names, tell us about what it was like to come up with.
No, I'm
With
glad
just Noms
I'm
and
glad
then-
he mentioned this. So I thoroughly remember him saying, "Hey Osama, I have a list of like I have done this, and I was actually super. So it was very refreshing for me that a client has done not only his due diligence but is also very much involved in the process. He said, "I have a list of 400 names. You can tell me what do you think about it." And this is where I'll briefly touch on the topic of entrepreneur's dilemma, or what we could say the creative tunnel vision. So there are times when a creative or an entrepreneur gets indulged and absorbed and immersed in a process so much that they lose sight of the process, or like what's the process like. And this is that time when you need to have some external subject matter consultants, expertise, or at least focus groups who can guide you in the right direction. So I said to Hamza that I would love to hear those 400 names as well, but I would not want to bias myself with your research. So maybe
Fair point.
we can start off, instead of going with 400, we would rather, instead of going with the process of deletion that we are deleting from 400 to 1, let's reverse the process. Let's start with, let's say, 4 names first. If it sticks, it sticks. And then if it doesn't stick, we add 4
We'll
more.
shift
And
it.
then you add 4 more.
We'll shuffle.
We'll shuffle.
Yeah.
The very first name, other than the other names we recommended as our primary candidate, was adopted. And here I would like to add that the reason why we have at the moment Nom/S is the fact that during our research we realized that most of the snack brands in the world, interestingly enough, there's no like method to madness though, but there was this one common denominator. All of them were ending on S. Without naming the brand names, all of them mostly, if there are a chips brand or a snack brand, they end on S. Reason being, they go with the unit-based approach. So for instance, in this case, if you are sharing one chip of Noms nachos, we would call it Nom, whereas the collective is Noms. So we were like, we might as well just follow it, but at the same time, our goal was the name has to be so small and so easy on the tongue, and it also has to be multinational in terms of its understanding. So this is where we came up with the name. Also, the thing with names is they grow on you. For the first time you hear them, I guess you become a bit iffy, but second, third, fourth time.
But this
They
name
start
was
with-
immediately chosen.
Yeah.
I think it's a really
was
fun,
immediate.
quirky sort of a name.
Yeah,
I
it was
think,
immediately chosen when
I think it's also very nostalgic to people who watched, for instance, Sesame Street and
Yeah.
gone off
Exactly.
of the Cookie
Exactly.
Monster. And it was for me, it was that sort of touch point where they was banking off of that concept of nostalgia too.
I
So
also
once the-
feel it's very easy to pronounce.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't matter
that was
if
one
you.
of the that was one of the criteria.
Yeah, but
You cannot go
Pakistan में
wrong
इतने
with this.
ज़्यादा dialects
Yeah.
हैं, इतने वो हैं.
You cannot
It's
go
easy to
wrong with
pronounce
the
in any
pronunciation.
language or whatever. Noms.
So once the
Brilliant.
name is locked, we right away jump into this process. This slide right now is what is referred to as a mood board. Whenever you're conceiving a brand, a very good tool to use are benchmarks. The benchmarks shared by Hamza from all across the globe, we were not only gauging them on the digital arena only, we were also gauging them in terms of its packaging, its touch point, what does it feel like, what is the color like, and what are the reflections. Most of the benchmarks we were seeing were word marks. Now, what is a word mark versus a combination mark? If you see, let's say Coca-Cola is a word mark. It does not has any graphical representation, and it's just the word written in it. Whereas Pepsi is a combination mark. There's Pepsi written in a certain format, and then there is also this
And
this
visual
blob
ball.
they are using. The back. Some people call it the ball. Some people call it the globe, which is that red and blue graphical representation. It can be used interchangeably as well. But from day one, and in a mood board, we are trying to see the mood of the client per se. In this stage, it's more subjective in nature. We
Okay.
do have technical dispositions, but it's more subjective in nature, and we try to gauge as to what sticks and what does not.
Yeah.
Although seemingly they are the same, they are poles apart in terms of their mood and
Design.
the kind of need states they trigger or they attach themselves to.
Okay.
Our disposition by this stage was very simple. We'll go ahead with a word mark. Reason being, and the reason why we have these mock packages over there is we are very big on the fact that we call it primary touch point. So if a logo has to appear, let's say on a bottle, seeing it on screen only in terms of decision making process is a bit of an injustice to the creative process. So you have to apply it on the possible primary application and then see. In this case, you'll see we were going in two different directions. One was more playful, more color oriented, and the other was more powerful, more fire oriented. Fiery would be
For
a nice
sure.
term, right?
For sure.
Exactly how generally late teenagers are, right? They're more experimental, more adventurous. Either you trigger an already existing mood of your target audience, or you induce
That
a certain mood. So I'll give you a very simple example. There are certain sports brand, let's say, in the market. As soon as I say their name, something psychologically triggers in you to be more active and more sporty and whatnot, right? Whereas there are more cozy, we call them comfort brands or comfort foods and whatnot. As soon as we hear them, will be more docile. So these are these are inducing brands.
Okay.
So it's a very nice healthy balance that either you target an already existing mood or you induce a certain mood. In this case, since we were trying to make a new category and market of our own, we were trying to, enforce is a very strong word. I would rather say we were trying to wrap a new layer of certain mindset with regards to the snack, because our idea was people are not just buying the product, they are also buying the brand, which is still true to the ethos of the brand. And this is where it gets interesting. This was greenlit by Hamza out of all these different options of potential word marks. So this is where we start off with the very initial process, and then we go towards conversions and we come up with more specific.
I have a question to both of you. Tell me a little bit about the decision to go with that type of packaging. When I say type of packaging, I mean medium. Because you can see on the screen, right? So there's 3-4 different types of packaging, not different branding styles or packaging styles.
This was just an exercise to show
What
how
it would look
on
Yeah.
different packages, but we knew that we wanted to go into the pouch.
Was there any reason for that? Or just
It's
that
more
the
of a-
norm?
It's the norm and it's
Yeah.
the industry standard.
okay,
Yeah.
interesting.
And from our perspective, we do not, at this stage, we do not touch packaging.
Okay.
Packaging for us comes at the very last stage, where we decide, okay, what kind of, are we going with matte, gloss and whatnot. These are just reference points to showcase that.
How the actual end result would look
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, and potential if you did choose to go with that different type of packaging.
Exactly.
By this stage, one thing was set on stone was we are going all caps, and I would not go into the details of it as to why though, but all caps and in a certain typeface. From this week, and this is where we start going towards the actual, what it could look actually, right? And these are just mocks we showcase. By this stage, our key decision was, are we to go with white predominantly or black? But after seeing these, the idea was we'll go with, and I'll come to that later on, we'll go with black. So by this stage, the general look and feel was done, and we were like, okay, we are going with blacks. But here was, if you have noticed, here there is a very interesting transition which is happening. And from brand case study point of view, I have to mention this. This is where, when we started indulging more in the brand, we got to know that this brand would, potentially in the future, would house different product categories which are within the extruded snack brand realm, so different verticals. So this is where the question came, do we separate those products as separate brands, or do we bring them or converge them into a singular arena? And this is where it got interesting, that we would rather have house of brand sort of a approach, where we are having certain product types with a certain brand name, and this is where, again, all of these are proof of concept at the moment. So we are just telling them what it could potentially look like, what it feels like.
For different lines of products.
For different lines of product.
The same
One thing which was very casually mentioned by other stakeholders, but for me and Hamza, the younger generation, it was the key, was the fact that this chip is less in fat and has higher protein. I'll let Hamza quote the exact numbers as to how much are they, because these are a bit outdated. But since as soon as we got these numbers, we wanted them to look nice and bold and fat enough on the package in itself, so that people know what they're buying. It's not just another product; it actually is healthy. Hamza, do you want to touch on the numbers as to? And we'll come to that later on as well.
We've actually achieved, so it says 30% less fat, but we actually achieved a higher number. So we're closer to that 50% mark. It's actually 2.5 times more protein and 2.5 times more fiber.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Compared to your regular conventional chip.
This is where some of the key stakeholders in the company mentioned the fact that can we add more color to it? And this is where the debate of colored versus an all solid black chip started. So as you can see on the right side, waves are a homage to the product type in itself, which is wavies. Also, I don't know if you can see this, but here you'll see Nomsverse.
The concept of the Nomsverse was that we were trying to create a whole line of snacks. And at the time when I mentioned this to Usama, NFTs and the metaverse was a big thing. So Usama quickly gave the idea, so why don't we create the Nomsverse? The NFT thing, Usama can explain more.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like a great idea, because we are trying to create a full lineup or a full universe per se, like snacks.
I think the best part is when you say Nomsverse, every techie, it just sticks to your mind, right? You
and
know,
that was the major reasoning. Our idea was we would indulge our audiences in the form of games. So we might create a game later on. So we do not want a simpler only landing page website. We might have a leaderboard sort of a project. There could be actual on-ground competitions which would be happening, and they would happen, inshallah, as we move forward. And this is where the idea was, we would create a Nomsverse, a couple of planets. People can make their own planets with certain combinations. They can pick different teams. And also the fact that we were trying to create mint some NFTs, which we might, it still is not discarded. It's just
not down and out.
It's a shelved, it's a shelved idea where you not only will generate NFTs in a digital format, we'll also print them, and we could potentially put them like those Willy Wonka golden tickets as well.
For sure.
Speaking of which, again, a very quick shout out to AClan Labs, now that we have started gamifying most of our brands as well. The general nomenclature or general orientation is adopted. What's next? What would it look like if we were to play around with the font types, if we were to play around with different colors and whatnot? So again, you have already seen the product, so you'll see the word mark type or the word mark from the third was more or less we were leaning towards it. But at the same time, there was a question mark that can we go very crazy with the brand? Can it look like an art canvas or what?
That's just Game of Thrones right there. With
and a lot, if you see a lot is going on. There's a dying man. There's a dying man trying to get Noms. There are seagulls at the same time trying to get Noms, shark and whatnot. Again, this is just a testament to the fact that when there are many different key holders with different creative mindsets sitting on the same table, they try to go in different directions and then they talk each other into it. Again, a lot is going on over here. As you can see, is very much in line with what we are trying to do as well, which is guilt-free snacking, because it actually is healthy. So by this time, we had formally adopted these. We were like, okay, we have formally adopted these. And just by the way, our process was not as simple as only these mocks. I still remember Hamza not only used to print each and everything, but he also used to have a special feeler in his office with all these racks, where he used to put them and then see what a potential, like a POV view of what it could look like.
What we did was we got these
The depth.
We got these old display racks of snacks from stores that they had just thrown away. So we just got it for them for free. We just painted them, and we put every other product we could find just to see and compare how it looks like with other brands.
Yeah. We had formally adopted this. We were also talking
thought
about
it
it
was
around the
done.
town. Yeah, we were saying it's done, it's done. Also, like all the colors were adopted and whatnot.
Yeah.
But while we were doing these meetings, there's this another very interesting, crazy creative who happens to be Hamza's cousin. We went to him and we were like, okay, we are going ahead with this. What do you think? And he said, can I look at the rest of the prototypes or mocks?
You
or
mean all
products?
50,
Yeah.
60 of them?
Someone trustworthy from within, like, of course, close enough. Someone trustworthy, very loyal to the business and whatnot, but very external at the moment to the creative process, brought in his understanding. And then we went back, we did a new survey, and turns out we were like, okay, this might work. This could potentially work, but this is where it was very hard for us to sell it to the other artistic, creative side of the table.
Okay.
So, like, an interesting thing happened. Like, we started, and again, as soon as we printed it, we started doing mocks.
all got printed.
Hamza at that time was also traveling, so you'll see a very interesting, crazy photo. So it's like in Istanbul, he's carrying it everywhere.
These are not Photoshopped.
Yeah, these are actual photos.
These are not Photoshop. These are
Actual photos. He printed them, even stapled them. So that's even nicer.
Yeah, so I actually filled them with like paper and stapled them
Yeah.
to make it look like actual
To,
bags.
to make it look like an actual pack, and the
That
fact
right there is dedication. I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off, but this is just.
this drill is also very important because for us, digital, especially these days,
course.
digital is primary, and the way it would look on Instagram and whatnot is also very paramount, right?
Just to
100%.
touch on that, so this was also formally adopted.
Yeah,
then
this was formally, and
translated
it still
into-
is.
Yeah, so we realized the reason I took them with me as well and created samples out of them was at this point we realized that the certain typeface was what we needed, right, to stand out.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was done, and that is where it gets interesting. The creative side, or rather artistic side, I'm saying, said, can we bring more pizzazz or more colors into
Color
the
into it.
equation? This is where the colors start kicking in, and the idea was we'll keep it very minimal in terms of its look and feel. Here you'll see these were the 4 final colors, but by this stage, the typeface, the orientation, the colors were done. It was just some supplementary elements we were trying to gauge into and trying to like see as to what could fit in and what not.
I see that
Yeah.
on the screen you have on towards the left you have the different colors of the in terms of the typeface. What was that like? Why black? Why grayish black? And then why do that exercise?
Very important and very interesting question actually, and it only like we would have to go back and see one thing. So generally blacks and whites are considered universal combinations, and they are at times not even considered colors, especially in the print division. So if you're a black background, you can have a colorful front.
Okay.
And I would like to, over here you would like to see the design in 2 terms. There is the front and then there is the backdrop, right? Over here, the front could be colorful because the back
Yeah.
was one solid color, which is not even a color.
Yeah.
But when we are talking colored variations,
Yeah.
then the design becomes too noisy if your background is also very colorful and your front is also very
Okay.
colorful. So this is where you have to go with a unicolor approach for the front as well. We
Right.
call it like monochromatic of the sorts. Why didn't we go with white? Because the colors we were shooting for were more neonic in nature. And the reason for neons is I guess I personally love neon, Hamza loves neon as well, but it also went with our brand and with our persona and what kind of brand we want to conceive, right? So that's why we had to do an all black front, but this is where it also gets interesting. You can do an apples to apples comparison Black stands out by a margin as compared to the colored variation
It does, yeah.
on the right. I think we were not only keeping it to screens only, we used to print them, and we also used to check them in different lights.
Okay.
Indoors, you can see in the office environment or in sunlight and whatnot. So on the bottom right, you'll see it's within office, how a tube light would interact with the package, and then over there the sunlight. The best part about that day was it was formally adopted. We really loved what we were seeing. It was really colorful.
Yeah.
And this is where it gets finalized and adopted, and like this is where so with packaging you still have to keep yourself a bit leashed, because it's more it's not volatile, it's not dynamic, it's set on stone to an extent. A very small design decision people do not really recognize this at times. Let's say a certain color code is expensive and it's only ₹1 expensive. For a unit, it doesn't matter, but we are talking like tons and tons of production, right? So these design decisions matter a lot. What I absolutely loved about the entire team at Noms was they didn't become hasty by the end of it, which generally is the case. People are like, okay, we see the finish line, let's just go with the flow.
End it.
Yeah, let's just get over with it. They were patient enough. They were like, okay, now let's match the exact color coding, exact elements. So they were from one of the top suppliers. Sheets used to come in, the exact sheets. We used to look at them. Again, an expensive affair, but they were still willing to go this extra mile to see and get the best possible product. But this is where the digital journey starts. In digital, we can go crazy. So these were formally adopted. The brand manual kicks in. This is the next step. And then comes, now you can see the craziness starts from a marketing standpoint, because then you can go on, and also like these.
The sky's the limit, honestly.
Yeah. This is also very interesting. We, as an organization, especially Noms, has always been very mindful of the impact. So we try to keep, wherever we can save out, we try to keep very sustainable packaging, very minimal, instead of going very UDA. But yeah, there are some special packages which we give to very special folks who are our brand custodians and patrons. And this is where we stand today, which is Nomsverse on the digital realm.
Yeah.
All of what you saw was the process over a number of years.
Okay.
This was, I think, a 2-year process. During this process,
at least with us, it was 2 years. And then
I'm sure it's still about.
So in this time, we had consistent feedback from people in our circles, whether it's relatives, friends or family, or advisors, or people in the industry that we knew. The problem was that everyone kind of liked the creative designs or the packaging that whatever we had, but we felt that the industry was stagnant when it came to design.
Yeah.
Right?
Fair.
So people did
Or
not
rather
have
agnostic.
rather agnostic, or people did not have much to go on. They did not have new benchmarks. People are used to telling you what works, and people usually take the safe route.
Okay.
जो चलता है वो
जो
चलाओ
चलता है वो चलाओ. Right? Why take the risk?
Yeah.
You put in an investment, all of that stuff. Why take the risk?
Of course.
So, but we knew that that wasn't enough, and we needed to create something different. That was something that was new. With that said, when we reached to the final product, I think we were equally as amazed as the people around us, because we did not imagine. So if you go to the picture that you had when we were looking at the
absolutely.
lights, so we were as Usama's face tells you.
I mean, of course, that's a very rare
We
face.
did not expect this, because
That's true.
as soon as we received it, so for us it was all about color. The color had to be perfect.
As soon as we shipped the designs from our side, I was like, okay, now it's the ball is in the packaging company's court. Let's see what they come up with. And I was not expecting this. The moment I saw what they had created, I was like literally this is what I generally am like. I don't really smile in client meetings, but this was the first time I couldn't stop Interestingly enough, unfortunately, I do not have the photos over here on this deck, but if we go on our Instagram and we go on our Nomsters highlight on Nomsverse, without spending a singular dime, the moment the product reached the stores, it was gone. Whenever we used to do meetings, Hamza had the habit, because he was also doing these, now I know, like these interesting flavor testings on the side. So he used to open those up, bring them in. And even if I was on a diet or something, I couldn't stop myself from munching all the way. Because they feel very light.
Guilt-free, na?
It actually feels very light on the stomach.
We had our surveys done. We had given them out to people to test them out and give us their feedback. But you never know until you actually put it in the stores and have unbiased people, people with no connection to you, actually go into stores and pay money for something to buy it. So we strategically placed them in those locations where we knew our core target audience shops, and and like I said, our packaging did the advertising, and it caused shortages in stores. We hadn't advertised. People themselves started reaching out, giving shout outs. So even that our Nomsters highlights is just filled with people taking pictures, taking videos and sharing it on their platforms.
All organic, not a single spend, like not a single time spent.
कितनी यार validation हो जाती होगी ना
that was a validation.
After such a long journey, when you know that your product has that punch and your packaging and branding does justice to it. और जब फिर लोगों का पाकिस्तान में तो बड़ा brutal feedback भी आता है, people don't know that.
For sure.
So
I think
really
this exercise is something that companies really need to start doing when it comes to both the client side and the agency side. People appreciate if you bring on new things, new ideas, and I think this is a testament to.
And it's just the start. It's just like this has just started
for
now.
Noms,
We expect to bring in more products. We expect to bring in more flavors. Inshallah, it's going to come.
Tell me one takeaway that you feel like someone who's venturing out into uncharted territories, much like you yourself did. Tell me one takeaway from your experience that you would want to tell to a budding entrepreneur. Someone
I get it. So the first thing we did and still do to this day is educate ourselves as much as we can.
Okay.
Your intuition, your gut feeling on a decision will only be there if you take your best educated judgment or decision.
Yeah.
Intuition otherwise will not come to you. Because most of the decisions you take at the end of the day boils down to intuition and the research you've done behind it.
Yeah.
When you're venturing into uncharted territory, that's where intuition comes in.
For sure.
So educate yourselves as much as you can before you take that decision.
Okay.
And it requires a lot of resolve. It requires a lot of determination. There are off days. Your motivation is going to go up and down. And don't give up too easy. Like Usama said, we never settled on anything.
For sure.
Because sometimes you want to settle.
Yeah.
And maybe you think, it's fine enough, I've done enough.
Yeah.
But
to persevere.
But you can't settle.
Yeah.
If you really want to reap the benefits, then you can't settle.
Okay. And now on to my
Good advice.
less serious question. What are your favorite flavors of Noms? Like we're trying to get people to eat.
यार ये बड़ा मुश्किल सवाल है यार वैसे.
So it's a hard question. I mean, it's like my kids, but it's like I have to choose between my kids.
Yeah, this is what I was about to say. Like it's very hard. In all honesty, it's very hard for me as well. For me, the two contenders are Thai sweet chili
Okay. Yes.
and cheddar jalapeno.
There's some people who are just crazy about a specific flavor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've had a customer reach out to us every 2 weeks because when she goes into the store to buy a specific flavor, she buys like 50 packets and they sell out. And
एक ही flavor का.
there's one flavor she buys consistently.
I think you have your brand ambassador for Noms.
So it's a different palette.
Wow.
There's taste palette for all the flavors that we made.
Thank you so much for joining us for the inaugural session of Rundown. I hope कि ये इतना insightful था जितना हम लोगों ने इसको break down करने की कोशिश की. We'll be bringing more of such real life case studies. उनको थोड़ा सा आप लोगों को break down करके बताएंगे. And inshallah we will keep this journey going.
And before we go, I would like to give a shout out to Hamza. Huge shout out to Hamza and team for trusting us with this very mammoth process. It's not very easy to trust a rather, although we are 10 years old, but still from the industry standards, a rather young company or a young firm with such key design decisions. Where at the same time, I would also I would like to invite you guys to come talk to us both on Nomsverse about the brand. If we are very hands-on. If you have any questions, you have some suggestions, you want to post something, and same goes for Rundown as well. So you can reach out to us on our AClan channels, and then we would like to have a conversation with you guys on whatever we are doing. So yeah, that's it. I guess
Thank you, Usama.
That's a wrap.
Thank you, Hamza.
Thank you.
See you guys soon.
Thank you.